Welcome to Teams Tuesday, a podcast about mastering the best about what other people have already figured out. Teams Tuesday focuses on insights and lessons that never expire. You will walk away from every episode with actionable insights that help you get better results and be more productive.
This was about as bizarre and easy as it gets.
The client just couldn't make up their mind.
I feel like we had top.
Went from a project of 20 weeks to just 2.
The DevOps was a cultural shift.
This is Teams Tuesday with your host, Peter Ward.
Welcome to Teams Tuesday. It's July the 19th, 2022. And my name is Peter Ward. I'm the host of Teams Tuesday. We have a great guest, another fellow co-worker, another fellow MVP as well, Anna Jahara. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, doing good. How are you?
Okay. And you're located in Ahmedabad. So what time is it there where you are right now?
It's 9:45 p.m.
Okay. And is that your real background or is that a virtual background?
No, that's a real background.
Okay, so how would you class your job title at the Soho Draga India office? I know, are you team lead, general manager? What is that? What is that then?
I would say tech lead and team lead. Like my daily activities are basically making some technical decisions for some of our projects and as well as leading few teams. So that's what my daily activities are, and then providing some overview on or help or guidance to our recruiting team in recruiting better people for our team.
Okay, and how many people are in your office now these days?
In total in India, we are around reaching 100 people. In office, I would say around 40 people, rest of people working from home.
Yep, okay, so it's 100 people in total, or 60 in Ahmedabad and 60 in and around India.
Yeah.
All right, very cool. And the topic you're doing is Teams automation with Power Automate. I can see your PowerPoint in the background. So do you want to share your screen? And so just out of interest with this demo, what are the three cool, good things about this demo that the audience should be looking at?
Yeah, so Teams is kind of a go-to tool when people are using Microsoft 365. It's become like a daily life tool where you use day in and day out. So what I try to achieve today is explain you what automation you can do with Teams, using Power Automate, so that can make your life easy and help you with your productivity. So I'll brief you about what can be done.
Okay, very cool on that. And I know your blog is very much on the Power Automate. I'll put the URL in the chat actually. And if there's any questions from folks, please put that in the chat. And of course, this will be on SoundCloud, YouTube, and Spotify. All right, so carry on.
Awesome. All right, welcome everyone. So today I'll talk about what automation can be possible using Teams. For Teams using Power Automate. So let's get that going. I work at Dragon. I'm a business and applications MVP, and rest of the information is here, and Peter will be sharing in the chat as well. All right, so today's agenda. So I'll give you a little introduction on what Power Automate is. Then we'll talk a lot about adaptive cards. I'll give an introduction on what adaptive cards are, because before I dive into the details of it, I'd like to explain what it is in brief. Then what team connectors are available in Power Automate. A lot of it can be done in Power Automate to automate your team things in Teams. So I would like to give you an overview, you can do this, do that, how to do this, how to do that kind of stuff for Microsoft Teams in Power Automate. Then I have a short demo on how to do approvals with Power Automate. So we'll do an introduction and show you a scenario and a demo for Teams approval. All right, so a little bit of overview of Power Automate. So Power Automate is how you automate workflows in Microsoft 365, create business logic and model for your business processes using different data sources like Dataverse, SharePoint, Azure, whatever you want to use from Microsoft 365, even the external sources as well. It has a lot of great integrations with multiple products and even the external products which are not part of M365. So
Right.
if you can do automation workflows, also implement governance to approvals, then it is really deeply integrated with M365 products. And the good part about it is you don't have to write code. So this is not for developers. This is also for power users and also for citizen developers.
So this is the whole no-code solution here, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
So that is what Power Automate is about.
Okay, so that's what they said about SharePoint Designer, but that wasn't quite the case, was it?
No, that is why it failed, I would say. It didn't, like, the last version of SharePoint Designer is 2013 and there is no version after it. Like, it's been almost nine years, but we see a lot of growth in Power Automate, actually whole of Power Platform. So I think Microsoft is making really good investments in Power Platform, and Power Automate has been a go-to product for any workflow implementation, not just SharePoint, but for like even D365, Dynamics 365 workflows are also implemented using Power Automate.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so in order to understand what Power Automate can do is Power Automate has a base structure called connectors. So what are connectors? Connectors are ways for users to connect to different services or products like Outlook, OneDrive, SharePoint, Dynamics 365, even external tools like Twitter or Facebook or whatever who exposes their platform with APIs. So it technically is an API, but it has a wrapper around it. So it's easy for user to work with it. So user does not have to go into technicals of an API. So there would be different types of connectors like standard, premium, and custom connectors. Standard connectors are the ones that are included within M365 licenses. And premium connectors are which have to be bought as a part of separate license. And custom connectors are like if developers want to dive into Power Automate, they can also build their own APIs, and develop custom connectors for those APIs.
And this can all be done on E3 licenses?
The standard connectors are available as part of E3 licenses. Some of the premium connectors, like using HTTP or using Dynamics 365 related connectors, you need a premium license. So there is a Power Automate separate licenses for Power Platform that need to be bought along with E3.
See.
But lot of stuff is included in standard. So I would say if you're just doing SharePoint, most of the stuff would be covered under standard.
Mm-hmm.
Connectors are set of operations. So they are either called triggers or they are either called actions. So we'll understand in further slides what are triggers and what are actions. And most of the time the connectors are tied to an account. So that is how the connector's usage is tracked. Like, for example, if I'm creating an item in SharePoint or pushing a request to SharePoint, that happens through an account attached to that connector. So that is how it will create it using my account. If my account is configured on that connector, then using my account, that account triggers an action. So triggers are events that kick off the workflow. So there would be something needed for a workflow to kick off. It could be like a manual trigger, like the user goes in and kicks off the workflow, or it could be an automated trigger which happens on an event, like when a new item is created or updated or deleted, or like in terms of Teams, when a new message is added within a channel in a Teams, or new Teams is created, or new member is added to the team. So there are a lot of triggers available for different products of M365. So some of the triggers could be a polling trigger, which would check frequency of new data. Like I mentioned, create a new item in SharePoint, it would poll SharePoint just to see if new item is created in SharePoint.
Just like a listener, basically.
It's kind of the automatic triggers which are listening on certain events is what polling trigger is, and push triggers which wait for manual push to trigger. So for example, if user is manually starting a workflow from Teams or a SharePoint, there could be a push trigger. Then those were the triggers which start the workflow. Then once the workflow has started, the workflow needs to perform certain operations. So those certain operations are called actions. So actions define what your workflow would do, right? and then action would run after the trigger. So trigger will start the workflow and actions will perform the operations that workflow needs to do. And in terms of Power Automate, workflow is called a flow. So that's why you see the term flow here. And actions can use the dynamic content. So you can refer to, for example, when a new channel message is added, you want to do something, right? Then you can use the data from that channel message within your actions so that you can use the dynamic data from whatever the event has occurred. And you can also like get the details about, for example, if a new channel message is added, you can get the details about what the message was, who sent the message, when the message was sent. So those kind of dynamic content is available within your flow to use it for further actions you want to make in your workflow. All right, so that was a quick overview on what Power Automate is and how it works. Now I'll talk a little about adaptive cards because we'll talk more like because Teams automation uses a lot of adaptive cards, I'll give a quick overview of what adaptive cards are. So here the screenshot that you see is an adaptive card I've taken from Teams. Like I posted a adaptive card in Teams and that is what you see here. So adaptive cards are like a UI component which users can interact with, and they are portable to any device, app, or UI framework. So the same code you can use in multiple apps or device or UI framework. It would look the same in all of the devices, and there is no code needed or allowed. Those are like declarative kind of component, and they are automatically styled as per the branding guidelines of adaptive cards. So you don't need to style it by yourself, and they are authored in JSON. So you just need the JSON of the adaptive card to put in your Power Automate, or whether it's Power App or Azure. You just need that same JSON to be put at multiple places for your adaptive card to be integrated in different places.
What market is this going for?
So to create UI components, for example, you have a Teams message and you want to perform certain action for that Teams message. So I would have created a flow where I can select the Teams message and I would have a flow to create a task from that message. Like, okay, create a task for this message. Then for doing that kind of stuff, I want to show a little form to the user when user says that, okay, create task for this message. So to show that little form, how can I spin up that form as quick as possible? So that's where adaptive cards come into picture. That okay, Teams supports adaptive cards and Power Automate also supports adaptive cards. So you create a workflow, inject that form within the workflow to appear when the workflow is kicked off. And then the form would take the details on creating the task from the user and then create a task probably in Planner or in Microsoft To Do. So it's kind of a form or it can also act as a UI component to show information to the user. So Microsoft has adaptive card designer. So you don't need to write the JSON by yourself in order to create the adaptive card. So here is a UI which you can use to create adaptive cards. Let me just quickly show that in the browser. So here you will select the hosting app in which you want to put the adaptive card. So for example, I want to do it for Teams, and then I will select, this is the default card which is provided by the designer. But if I think I don't need all of this stuff, I can just remove all of this. And then, for example, I think that, okay, I need input box. Then I'll put an input box here. I need to input box. And then I need a label for that input box. Probably I will call that task title. And then this would be the. So this is how I can create form here.
Very drag and drop.
Yeah. and I can add buttons as like as I want. And then once I feel that okay, my form is ready, I can like preview it on how it would look. Then there is a JSON that is getting built for your form here for your adaptive card. So that's what you need to copy the payload, which will copy this JSON, and you just take this and put it in wherever you are using it. So I'll show in the further demo on how we use the adaptive card within Power Automate and Teams. So these are like quick UI components which you can use within different Microsoft 365 cards. So that was a short overview on adaptive card and adaptive card designer. All right.
So basically,
yeah.
would you go along with that? That's kind of like almost like Power Apps Lite, basically, where very simple forms, approve, reject, vacation requests, that kind of thing, which is very simple interaction.
Yeah, and this is just a UI component, so no, it doesn't have much of logic which Power Apps forms would have. It's more of like taking the input from the user, quick input from the user, or showing a quick information to the user where we would use it. So for example, if we put a Power App within Teams, it would occupy the whole screen space, even if we want to show a small message to the user, right? That's where adaptive cards come into picture, is where you want to show small set of information or want to take small set of inputs from the user. That's where you would use adaptive cards. So now we'll go through Microsoft Teams related triggers and actions which are available in Power Automate. So that will give you an insight on how to use this and what this triggers and actions can do for you. All right, so the first trigger we are talking about is when new channel message is added. So as you might already be aware that, okay, Teams would have Team and then it will have different channels under it. So sometimes what happens that you are part of so many channels, and but few of the channels are very much important for you, and few of the others you can probably sometimes ignore. But there are few messages in few channels which you can't ignore, and you need to like pay attention to it. So that's where this trigger would help you that, okay, there are two channels from which I can't ever miss the messages. So what happens is like I'm part of like 15 teams, and then those teams collectively have 50 channels. Imagine the message and the information overload that you would have, right? Where you might miss the messages from some of the important channels, right? Which you don't want to do. So what you can do is, using this trigger, you can implement an automation that, okay, from create a flow which monitors the messages of this channel and probably sends me a push notification on my phone, or it would send me an email, or a flow bot can send me one more notification that, okay, pay attention to this messages. Or you can like probably create a task in To-Do that, okay, look and go in the channel messages, because the important channels for which you wanted to look after, there are some new messages within that channel. So this is the trigger which you can use in all of these scenarios. So this trigger only fires for the root messages in channel. So as you might already know that, okay, there would be a root message and then there would be replies for those messages. So this trigger would only fire for the root message. It won't fire for the replies. So we are hoping that in the next update, we get this functionality for the messages to be like this trigger to be fired for the replies as well.
Using busy channels.
Like we would such, yeah, because like if busy, you'll get so many notifications and it won't serve purpose on what you're trying to do with this workflow. So for example, if you want to focus on some important notifications and if we are using it for a busy channel, then it won't serve that. Okay, you'll get so many notifications and it would already be an information overload. And it lot of information or of the message, like who sent the message, what was the date and time, and what was the actual message, the channel ID, even the links to the attachment if the message had attachments, and if it had mentions to any users within that message, it would return all of those information. So, and also you get the link to the message. So for example, if you want Flowbot to notify you about a certain message, you can include the link about that message in the Flowbot notification, so that if you click on that link, it takes you directly to that message. So that you don't have to search within the channel, okay, what this message was about. So this is how you configure the trigger, where you select the team and select the channel for which you want to get the notification. So the number of channels we want to implement this, like, okay, there are 3 important channels for which you want to get notified about. When a new message is added, you have to create 3 flows, right, with the same trigger, and you select those team and channel within that flow. And then further, you can add actions on how you want to get notified. So there are multiple ways to get notified. All right, then there is a next trigger for a selected message. So for example, I'm within Teams and I see that, okay, this is a useful message. I can create it into a task, or I want to add it to a OneNote, or I want to create an issue in my ticketing system. So all of those scenarios would be the usage scenarios for this trigger. So whenever I create a workflow with a trigger for selected message, that would show up when I go to a message. I click on those 3 dots, and my flows would show up here. So what actions I want to do for a particular message in Teams is the purpose of creating the flow with this trigger. So for example, you want to create a task. So what you'll do is you'll create a flow, select this trigger, then you'll also get the details of what that message was about. And then there are connectors available in Power Automate to create a task in 2D or Planner. And then this trigger also has an option to create an adaptive card. So for example, you want to allow user to create a task here, but you want user to provide further information on what that task is about other than this message, right? So you want to take that inputs from the user. So that's how you can create your own adaptive card, which takes those inputs, and that would kind of show up once you click on the create task. And then the flow would continue after you submit your adaptive card. Let me just show a quick demo on that. I'm within my team. Here I have want to create a task here. So this is an adaptive card, which is taking the details of task for me. So I have a flow called create task. The trigger of that flow when I click on those 3 dots. And then when I clicked on that flow, it asks me for more information on what details of task I want to put here. So this is, I created an adaptive card which takes the task title, task description, and a submit button. And then the flow would continue on creating the task based on this information. So this is the example of the flow that you can create for a selected message. So for any selected message within Teams, you can do this. So this trigger allows you to start a flow for a selected message in Microsoft Teams. It has optional input of adaptive card, as I just showed you that if you want to show up an adaptive card when user starts a flow, you can do it. Then there are different environments in Power Automate, like you can create a dev environment, staging environment, and the default environment is a production environment. So for the flow to work, for the flow to appear in those 3 dots when you select a message in Teams, you have to create the flow in the default environment. Then only the flow will appear there within Teams. If you create in any other non-default environment, then the flow would not appear. So sometimes you might think that, okay, I'm creating the flow in my dev and staging environment, and it is not appearing within Teams. So you may want to check that the flow is not in the default environment. So that is how it is by design. So that's one restriction here. And then be sure to, like, for example, your flow is creating a task based on a selected message. It's a good idea to send a notification that after the task is created by the flow, notify the user that this so-and-so task was created, so that user gets a follow-up that, okay, the workflow I started completed successfully. So it's a good idea to add a confirmation action at the end of your flow to notify the user on whatever your flow is doing for the selected message.
Right.
So examples of using this action is if you want to create a task, add that message to a OneNote, report a message, for example, if you want, if that message is not appropriate and you want to report it, and notify, for example, your HR or your operations, then you can implement that kind of scenario as well, or create a work item in Azure DevOps. You can also do that. Create an issue in your ticketing system based on that message. So the possibilities are endless here. All right, so like for selected message, trigger requires Power Automate action path must not be blocked. So you have to make sure it is not blocked by your admin. So there is a Power Automate action path available within Teams that needs to be enabled for the users who want to use this trigger. All right, then the next trigger is from the compose box. The compose box is the box from which you write the Teams message. This is kind of similar to the for a selected message, but for a selected message is for a message which is already sent from compose box. Compose box is before sending the message. For example, if you want to send a formatted message to the user, in that way, you can go to a compose box and then start a flow, and probably it shows you an adaptive card where you input the information, and then like flow can take that information from that adaptive card, format it, and then send it to as a message in Teams. So for example, we have a scenario where our recruiting team entering bunch of information about candidates within a team channel, and I don't want them to miss some information while posting and candidate information on a channel. So what I can do is for the recruitment team, I can create a flow which starts from the compose box and have them enter all candidate information within that adaptive card, and then that adaptive card would post the formatted candidate information within Teams, so that while posting the candidate details, the recruitment team does not miss any information to be added within the channel about that candidate. So that's
is this
one
something that we do? Is this something that your office does?
No, we aren't doing it, but like while checking out this trigger, like this is not an old trigger, this is kind of a new trigger. I thought of that this is one scenario where it could be implemented.
Understood.
Right. So the same way, the adaptive card can be also used with compose box, as we did for the selected message trigger. Then there are certain triggers for the Teams messages, like when a new chat message is added by a user or within the group chat. So like, or within the channel. So the flow would trigger, if the flow is using this, workflow is using this trigger, the flow would trigger whenever a new chat message is added in your Teams, because it would be using your account. So, but this trigger needs to be used with caution because it will fire so many times, as Teams kind of happens to be busy with getting so many chat messages during the day, and you might like consume all of the API limits that you have within your license. Like, I wouldn't recommend to use this, but there are other messages, other triggers which are available for specific use for the chat messages which you could use. Now, this is one good trigger when certain keywords are mentioned. So as team sometimes becomes information overload, you might not get time to read all of the messages within your team, but within your teams. But sometimes you want to focus on certain keywords like issue or bug or kind of if I'm a developer and I want to focus on issue or bug keywords, then what I'll do is if someone mentions anything about an issue or about a bug, then I'll create a flow where the trigger would be when keywords are mentioned, and whether I want to create it for a channel or a group chat. I would select that message type and then provide the keywords that, okay, for this keywords, I want my workflow to trigger so that I can pay attention to this kind of messages which has this keywords. And I can optionally select the conversations which I want to focus on, or this trigger will check all the group chats if I'm not selecting any specific chats from my team. So what you can do is you can then add further actions to get yourself notified when this workflow triggers, so that you can pay special attention to those messages which contain one of these keywords which I mentioned here is issue and bug. So you can do it certainly for any of the keywords you want to monitor within your messages. And it does return a target message ID, so you can use the other actions to get the message details using that message ID, and then further you can get notified or send that information to someone else from the workflow to notify other users as well. So the possibilities are kind of endless. But this is an interesting trigger which caught my interest that, okay, I'm getting 100 messages per day within Teams and I can't focus on all of it, but I want to focus on certain messages which contain certain keywords. So I want to specially get notified for those kinds of messages, and that's when I will use this trigger. All right. So the same thing of information overload. So you might be getting mentioned in you might be getting group chat notifications or one-to-one user notifications, even the channel messages notifications, but you want to get notified for the messages where you are particularly mentioned, like your name is mentioned. So that's when you can use this both triggers, is when I'm mentioned in a channel message or when I'm mentioned. So when I'm mentioned is more for group chat, and when you're looking for your mentions within channel messages is when you'll use that when I'm mentioned in a channel message. So basically this triggers would trigger whenever you are mentioned, and then you can perform whatever actions you want to do based on your mentions, like what you want to achieve out of it when you are mentioned in a specific message. Same way that this is also really good when you are using Teams across multiple tenants. So for example, you are using one of your tenants in your desktop Teams, and then you are mentioned within another tenant about, you will not get notified within your Teams desktop about it, that okay, your name was mentioned in a chat message in another tenant. So what you can do is, for that another tenant, create a flow with this trigger, and then for example you can get yourself notified via email that okay, you are being mentioned in this message, in this tenant, in this channel, so that you don't miss out on something that you are referred to in another tenant, another Microsoft Teams, but that is in another tenant. So this would be a really good use case of using it when you are using Microsoft Teams across different tenants, so you don't miss out on messages. Then there are certain triggers which are based on when a new team member is added to a team, and when a team member is removed from the team. The example of this scenario is, for example, there is a confidential team and you want to keep an eye that okay, which people are getting added to this kind of a team, and you want to keep an eye on members being added to that team. So you can use the trigger that, okay, when a new team member is added to this confidential team, get yourself notified. So it will bring your attention that, okay, this new team member is added to that confidential team. Or, for example, when you want to give kind of an onboarding information to that new member about the team they are getting added to. So probably they may not have an idea, okay, what this team is about. So you can send like brief introduction on what that team is about using this trigger that, okay, when a new member is added to this team, send an email or send a notification to this user who got added to this team that, okay, welcome to this team, like a welcome message, welcome to this team, and this is all the information about this team, where you have been added and how you can interact with other people on this team. So those are both use cases you can use this trigger for. And when a team member is removed, for example, if a certain member is removed from a team, and probably you might want to remove access of those users somewhere else if that happens. So that is also one use case of the removal of team members we want to implement. All right.
Okay.
So there are also certain triggers, which these are new triggers and these are really good, like introduced in last 3 to 4 months. So like what was the case before is you could able to post an adaptive card from Power Automate to Teams, and then you can also wait on the action of the user on that adaptive card. But then it had like expiry that, okay, the flow would only wait for 30 days for the response on that adaptive card, and otherwise, and then it would expire, and there was no way to extend that expiry after 30 days. So now Microsoft has introduced a new trigger that if you have posted an adaptive card from one workflow, then you can catch the responses of that adaptive card in another workflow, so that you are not waiting on an adaptive card in the same flow, which would time out in 30 days. So that is one good trigger which says like when someone responds to an adaptive card. So this is the difference which I just described, that, okay, when you are posting an adaptive card and waiting for the response versus posting an adaptive card and using this trigger that when someone responds to an adaptive card, you catch the response in another flow. So you can use this trigger that if you want to like do an open survey from people, or you want to implement approvals within Teams, that is when you can use this trigger. So I'll show a little bit of this in our Teams approval demo today. Then there is an action that if you want to automatically create a chat. So for example, if you have an issue tracking system, and from issue tracking system, there are 4 agents working on that, 4 different agents who need to work on that ticket. So you can create a chat flow from your issue tracking system within Teams, so that quick chat, group chat can be created using Power Automate within Teams, and it would add those 4 agents to the team. So this is kind of an action. So we were talking about the triggers till now. Now we have moved into actions. Actions are like what things you can perform with Power Automate within Teams. Triggers were about like what you can trigger from Teams using Power Automate.
So we're almost coming up to the hour. So you got about 2 minutes left.
Oh, okay. Okay, so then there are actions to get message details. You can get message details or list of messages from your team. Actions are really easy to implement. You just add it and you follow the instructions given within the Power Automate. You can configure it by yourself. You can also list certain chats, like recent chats from a channel or a group chat. Then you can reply to a message within a channel using Power Automate. So if you want to post a reply to an existing message in a channel, that's what you can do from Power Automate. Then if you want to do a quick survey kind of thing, there is another option available which you can use, is post choices of options from a flow bot to the user. So like scenario I have shown here is Flowbot would ask a question to the user, and then user would have certain choices to click, and then the response can be further taken by Flow, and then emails could be sent. So that is posting choice of options. Then you can post a message in a chat or a channel using Flow. So certain automated messages you want to post from Power Automate is you can do. There are certain limitations on the size of the message and the attachments you can include, but you can check those details and implement it accordingly. Then you can also post a feed notifications. Feed notifications is the activity notifications that you see on the Microsoft Teams. This is how you want to notify users about certain message already exists. You can do that within Flows. And then there are in Microsoft Teams, you can create certain tags to easily connect subset of the people on the team. So those tag creation and adding the members to that tag, deleting the members from the tag, that is all you can do via Power Automate within the teams. So, and also like if you are sending a message via Flow to certain users, if you want to mention that user, then you can also like get a mention token for the users to put the mention within the message you are sending from the Power Automate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Anna.
There's certain, yeah.
We're coming up to maybe we should do a part two of this actually.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll do a part two of this in the next month or so, because we're coming up to the hour, and on that is the cutting down the video. But thank you for this. This is the part one of Anna. It's a live show, so we'll do the part two in a month or so. Anna, very interesting stuff. This will be on our Spotify channel very shortly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here.